Welcome back. So this is Unit 3, and in this unit, we will be discussing object orientation, classes, and we look at methods, and we look at attributes of classes, how we can create an object and manipulate this object. So to begin, like we left off with the UML, you now have an idea what a class is. With the UML, you have the name of the class, the set of attributes of the class, and the methods in the class. So here, there's just a few definitions and examples. So if a student, again, a class is a model, all right, of a real-life object. If you have an example of a class that's a student, for example, then what will be the characteristics of the student? Those ones are the things we call the attributes, the things like the first name, last name, ID number, student number, house address. Those things are attributes of a student. So we can create a class of students with those attributes, which you're going to see an example very soon. An example is also like set of grades, but if it's a set of grades, then it occurs to you immediately that a set of things is an array or a collection. So if you're creating such an attribute, you have to be mindful of the data type. The first name of a student, for example, is a string. The last name is a string. The age, however, is an integer. So you have to keep the data types in mind. And methods are other things you want to think about, things that the student class can do, student object can do. And another method is something like write an exam. So a student may be able to write an exam. You can have a method for that. And you can have a method for increase marks by 10. So it takes a student object and increases the marks by 10. So that's pretty much the introduction. When you get into these classes, you have to, all of the methods have to have an access modifier. You have to decide if it's going to be a private method or a public method or whatever you choose to decide. And if a student is a class, then each student you create then becomes an object. So an example here is John becomes an object, Peter becomes an object, and they are all instances. So an object is an instance of a class. A class is like the defining formula of an object. So we always call an object an instance of a class, and a class describes an object. So the attributes of the objects and the methods. I'm trying not to use some technical terms here, but don't worry, with time we'll be comfortable to use more technical terms to describe these concepts. So exercise and everything refer to practice. So I'm going to go to practice and I'm going to show you guys a bunch of things. And most of the things here, this is the modules of this unit. It's extremely practice driven. So now I'm going to go to practice. However, before I go to the practice of unit 3, which I have here, and I'm going to upload for you guys, and I want to step through the whole unit by using this set of things, because this set of things, if I can show you how to do it, then you'll be comfortable with object orientation and classes. So the first thing is creating a class with attributes and methods. So let's try and create a class with a set of attributes for each class and a set of methods. So an example is the book class. If a book is a class, how do we proceed? So I'm going to come here to my Visual Studio. As you can see, I've cleared it out. So let me remove this comment. I just want to create a class. So to create a class, your main method is actually inside one class already. So this class is here. So it's your entry point. It's the first class. It's the starting class. And this class is in your project, and it's called a namespace, because when I was creating this project, this is what I called it. And I've explained the structure and I've given you some readings to do about the structure. But to create another class, I have two options. I can put it in the same file, which is not one of the best practice. The best practice is to put your new class in another file that appears in your Solution Explorer. So what I'm going to do, I'll go to your Solution Explorer and I'll right-click the project. And I will say add. I'll go to add is right here. And I will say class. All right. So the moment I say I want to add a class, it allows me to specify the name of the class. In this case, we're looking at a book class. I'll say book. And that's it, nothing else, add. As you can see now, there's another class here called the book class, all right? And the class is empty. As you can see, the class is still in my project, so the namespace is still the same. However, if I go to the program.cs, I'll see my main method, and my main class called program. And if I go to this other class, book.cs, I will see my book class. All right. And classes have two things, like I explained in the UML. They have attributes, all right, attributes, and they have methods, all right, methods, all right. So I have to now think, what are the attributes of a book, Then I'm thinking, if every book has a title, so the attributes are declared like variables, all right. So the title of my book is called variable, it's called title, and it's a string. What else? I can say it has authors, so it's going to have one or more authors. So I can say string like this, and then say authors. All right. Again, what I've done is now I've declared a one-dimensional array of strings for the authors. All right. So if I want it to be a specific length, I can do that. And I can manipulate, I can do whatever I want in that space. You know how arrays work and all of that. And in the meantime, I can just put 5 here to say that maybe no book should have more than 5 authors. All right. Or I can just say it's just an array which is strings. All right, that's fine. For a book, what else can I specify for a book? ISBN number. That's still a string. ISBN. And finally, let me put the year the book was published. So, and that's an integer, year published. All right. So all of these things constitute what I call attributes of my class. So I may now want to have methods. So methods could be, if I want to know the title of a particular book, I can say book.title, or I can say get title. All right. So you know how we write our methods. So if a method is gonna be public, meaning that I can access it in other places. Static, I don't need to create an instance to access it. You know what that means. Get title. All right. Then if I get title of this particular book, it's going to return a string for me. All right. And what I can do with the get title method is that since the method is inside this class, all right, I can then just say it should return the title. And I cannot find title as one of the things here because right now it's not public. So any attribute you want to be able to expose to the public class, you have to make those attributes as well public. All right. So I'll come here and say get title. So the title is returned. However, you can see that this title in this class is a local variable. So how do we know this is the title that gets returned? In object orientation, the moment the compiler says title, it looks at the attribute list of the class to check if there's a variable called title, which is this variable. However, if you're calling this from a public class, that is a public method that is static, you also have to make sure that this variable is public and is static. If I do not do that, if I make this only a public and a string title, you can see that that gets underlined and it says to me an object reference is required for a non-static field method property, whatever it is. So since this is a static method and it's public, the variable that I can reference from this class, from within this class, has to be public and also static. All right, then that is resolved. Other things that I would like to show you here, let's say I had another method that says public. It's a method, so let me say add 10 to year. All right. So let's say this method, okay, let's say this method is void, all right, meaning that it should not return anything. But this method is supposed to take an object called a book and just adds 10 to the year it was published. So I can give it a parameter called book. So in this case, I didn't give a parameter because I was performing this operation on the object itself, the class. So whatever this book is at the time, is what I'm going to return the title. However, in this case, I can use this method on any book objects that I find. So I'll say the type is book. I can call it a book. All right. So what we're doing is book is the name of a class. All right. So this is the type now. This acts like a type. A book is the variable. But when I add 10 to this object, which is an instance of this class, I want to return another object that has 10 added to the year of the book. So how do I proceed with that? First, I may want to create a new object that is a return one. I can call it return book. That's the new book. Equals new book. So when you're trying to create a new instance of a book, you use the new command. And you've seen new commands being used with arrays, so this is not new. So what I'm doing here, I create another variable. The goal is for this variable, I want to edit it and store the new things inside this other variable. So what I can do now is that the return book, which is my new variable, dot, I will now start setting its properties to the property of the former book. Author should be the same author as that former book. All right, that's fine. My return book dot, I'll go to the other attributes. ISBN is not changing, so a book dot ISBN. Check. Return book dot, I'll check if there's another property. Let's see. Yes, year published should not be equal to a book, which is the parameter I'm reading in, dot year published plus 10. All right, because that's the actual attribute I want to change. So let's look at this again. I take a book object. All right, it's an instance of this class called book. This book class is the class we are in it. So all these attributes apply to anything I declare as book. So when I declare a book object now has all these attributes, so I can use them. It also has these methods that are in this class. All right. So now, because I need to change this object, I would rather create another object. There's going to be a new book, fresh new book, and I will set the authors to be the same author as the former book, the ISBN to be the same ISBN as the former book. Now, when I say dot, I'm referring to the attributes of that book or the methods in that book. Then return book, year published, because this method is supposed to add 10 to a particular book, to the year a book was published, is that. Now we have this return book. However, we need to have access to this return book, so we need to return something. So our method may not, in this case, be void. We may make sure that it returns something. And as we always return integer, float, double, in this case, you know we are going to return a book. All right. So, and the last line now cannot be returned. The name of our new book is called Red Book. That's like a return book. And now I know I have a method that if I give this method a book, it can add 10 to the year the book was published. We can try this method out and see how it works. However, this method is public right now. I'm just going to make it static so that I can have access to it when I go to my main class. So we go back to the main class. And I want to first create a book and then call that method to add 10 to the book, then we display the book. All right. So creating a new book, again, you've seen it. To create a new object, you say the class first book. Let's call it test book. All right. Okay, I see what I'm about to do there. Text book equals new book. Okay. So now we've created a new book, meaning we've initialized another instance of that class, which is an object. Textbook right now has nothing in it. It's void. All right. Then I'll just start setting the parameters. Textbook dot. Now you can see I have access. I don't have access right now to the things inside that method. There could be many reasons for that. So we have to go look for the attributes in that class. So here are the attributes in that class. Title, okay, authors, ISBN, year published. So unless I make these things public, I may not have access to these methods. All right, so I'm going to make them public. So when I go back to my program class, I can have access to those methods. So So when I say dot this time, you can see I have access to these methods. Author, ISBN, year published, and all of that. All right. So authors also is an array. Okay. So but I will not deal with authors right now because I have a specific topic to deal with passing arrays to methods and to classes. We'll deal with that. So let's just set the ISBN. ISBN should be equal to, we need a string, so it's always like that. Something like that. Okay, let's say that's fine. And this textbook that we just created, dot, we can set another property. Year published, let's say it is 1999. And let me see if I can set one more property, textbook dot authors. So let's see how many properties do we have. We have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, we don't have access to the title from that class because we already made it static. All right, but another way to undo that, I could make it just public. And here I can now, if this method, I can make this method public also. And then this method still works fine. When a method or an attribute is static, where it is called needs to be static. All right, these are the things you have to understand. Static means we don't need to create another instance to be able to refer. We don't need to create another instance, yes, to refer to the attributes or the methods of the class. All right. The best way I can show you this is by example. However, I want to encourage you to read about literature and Google stuff and read about the context. So, title, we can return title by making it public. This method is static. This one works fine. I give it a parameter. Now I go back to my main program and I set the title now to writing fantastic programs in C#. All right, so let's assume that's the title of our book. And now the book is done. We have a book. In order to show you object orientation, I could have a method in this main class that displays this book. So let's write a method quickly that can display this book. All right, so I'll call it public. I'll call it void because it's displaying a book. Display. I use capital D because methods should display book. All right, and I'll give it a book. A book as book is the type, but I'll give it a book as a parameter. And that's it. And I will display everything in the book. Console.writeLine. And I would give it a book name, book title is, and I can concatenate with this parameter, a book.title. And I can copy and paste these lines a couple of times for other parameters. Book ISBN, or just call it ISBN. And I'll change the attribute here to ISBN. Then I would also look at what other attributes do we have. I think we had authors. I don't want to deal with that right now. ISBN year published. Year published. Yeah, ISBN year published. That should be fine. So let's just take year published. And I would have book dot year published. All right. And that should be fine in terms of displaying the book. All right. Okay, so this is a method in my main program that takes a book of the type of the class book, and hence it shares all the attributes of this class, and then I display each of these attributes. So since I have a book like this, I can then call that method display book. As you can see, that method does not look accessible right now, and the reason is that my main method right now is static. Okay, let me make it public. And let's say display public static. So now, because I need to access a method that is static from a static method, so if this method is static, I may not be able to access a non-static method from it. So in this case, I can then go and say display. As you can see, display book is now showing, and I now give it a book, and the name of this book is textbook. And if I run this program, and I'm expecting that a book shows up with all of these parameters. So let's run that, F5. It's coming up. As you can see, the book shows, right? If that's program C#, ISBN number that, year that. All right. So what we need to do now, I want to call that method in that class that increases the year of a book by 10. So let's call that method and see what happens. So I'm going to now say book, new book, okay, equals, then I'll call that method. The name of the method is book, is in the book class, dot add 10 years to a book, and I'll give it textbook. So what I've done is I've created a variable called a new book, all right? Or then there is this method in this book class. Remember that method we wrote that adds 10 years to the year a book was published. So I'll call that method, and I'll give it this book that we've already seen is 1999. Now we are expecting it to be 10 years older than that, which is 2009. Then I will display the book again so that we can just be sure that it's been added. All right. Just in my display, I want to add some empty console.writeLine so that we can have spaces between the books when they are displayed. All right, that's good. So let's work over this again. We created a book instance, we display it. We call a method in the book class to add 10 years to the a book, and we get another book. And then this new book is now what we display, new book. All right. Yeah, and let's see how that works. F5. As you can see, we have the old book here, we have the new book here. Every parameter or attribute is still the same. However, the year, now we've added 10 to it. So, guys, you've seen how to create a class. We worked on the book class. In the next video, I'll show you some more examples with the student class and how you can have methods both inside of a class and outside of a class, how you can create instances of an object, and how you can pass arrays and other things. We're going to look at more examples with objects and classes for the rest of today. Boom. See you guys on the other side.